Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. ReadswithRosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. And rock with me and get down to this new jam. With my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out.
Tala Falava, and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. She is an award-winning spoken word and published poet, a playwright and performer. She is an artist of Upu, words, who has years of experience carving, elevating, and holding spaces for storytellers of Te Moana Nui Akiwa. She has attained many achievements, from writer in residence at the University of Hawaii in 2018 to co-founding Rising Voices Youth Poetry Slam and the South Auckland Poets Collective. She has published 2 poetry collections, Afakasi Speaks and Full Broken Bloom. She wrote a theatre production called My Own Darling in 2015, co-created and curated Upu in 2020. She is one half of the organization Flying Fetu. It's my honor to welcome to the show Grace Iwashita-Taylor. Woohoo! Welcome, sis. Welcome, sis. I'm like caught between fangirl and trying to be professional, shaky voice, all of that. Welcome to the show. It is such an honor to hold space with you. How are you, sis?
I'm good. I'm trying to keep warm because it's getting cold back here.
It is.
But I'm
too,
good.
It is. Okay, I'm glad. I'm so excited that we're finally doing this. I do appreciate your time being here today. I guess, Grace, before we get started, if you could just do a brief intro. I did the real standard one that you probably get when you visit many podcasts and things like that. So let's get the Grace intro.
It's alofa. I'm Grace. I'm a mom first and foremost to 2 beautiful kids. My boy is 13 and my girl is 1. Nice big gap there, good babysitter situation going on. Then I'm a daughter to my mother and my father, but also a daughter of Oceania as well, of the Moana. And I'm a creative and also a daughter of South Auckland, born and raised, living in Avondale, but that's okay.
828, shout out to the 828. Wait, did I get that right? Sorry, carry on, sis, carry on.
I don't know. I'm still 279. That's old school. That's old school South Side for you. I guess that's me. I'm my ngafa is Samoa, England, and Japan. In Samoa, from Mota'a and Apulima and Upolu, and in England from a place called Glastonbury in Somerset, England. People will know it for the festival. Beyonce played there once, so that that put it on the map a bit.
There we go. Just put it up there.
But also my Japanese nafa, which comes through my Samoan side. Actually, my great grandfather was posted up in Fiji and married my Samoan grandmother, great grandmother. And that's a whole nother part of my ngafa that we're trying to reconnect with. Hence why I've put my Japanese name in the last few years on my name and my surname. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that, and I absolutely love that you added your Japanese connection, heritage to your name, because I think for me, the longest time I just knew you as Grace Taylor. Then when I was like, just recently, I was like, wait, I missed the memo. When did she add that? Where did she add that part? I was so curious about that. Like, how do you, I mean, now, trying to embrace and reconnect, but, as you were growing up, how were you navigating spaces when you're you've got roots and not just Samoa, but in England, and now, really trying to reconnect with your Japanese side. Like, how were you navigating spaces or even trying to deal with identity?
Yeah, I guess growing up, because being Afakasi is one thing, being a fair-skinned Afakasi growing up in Southside of Okalani is a whole other thing. And so I grew up as like the minority in terms of my color. And so I was always trying to prove that I was Samoan in primary school and intermediate, and I'd say going into high school as well. Because to be brown where I grew up was like awesome. To be fair skinned was like you were a geek, you weren't really cool. And so yeah, I was always trying to prove that Samoanness. And all I knew about my Japanese heritage was my mum was very proud of our Japanese line. And she'd always say, "That's why you got nice skin. That's why you don't get sick, man." She's very proud of, and we all have singer eyes, like as babies. But yeah, I navigating that world, like, to be honest, when I was in primary, I was actually quite embarrassed of my fair skin. And there was like a bit of like internal, I didn't realize it till I was older, but like internal racism that was kind of going on for me. And then it was actually through poetry that was my navigation tool to really explore my Afakasi-ness, my identity, my sense of belonging. And it was through poetry and writing and performing poetry and sharing that I was able to come to a place of peace with who I am, in terms of my ngafa. And then, yeah, so my Japanese line, my great-grandfather is the Japanese one, and he was in the military, and he was posted up in Fiji. He married my Samoan great-grandmother. They had children, and then when the war ended, because he was a civil engineer in the army, and when the war ended, they literally came to the house, grabbed him, put him on a boat, and shipped him back to Japan. And that's the absolute last that my family ever heard. So we didn't even know if he made it back to Japan, because apparently they stopped in Australia and then went to Japan, Auckland and Sydney, and then Japan. But yeah, so we don't know. And all through my life, or the last, like in my late 20s, I started meeting certain people that were they just were really encouraging of like, you have a very strong Japanese presence around you, in terms of your ancestors. And so, I don't know, I feel like I was kind of charged in my family to be the one to try and reconnect us. And I got a pretty strong message to use my name, the Iwashita name, and way to kind of call them to me. So yeah, that's a journey I'm on with my identity, my Samoanness. I'm good.
You're like, I got this. I'm gonna put the seven right here, but I need to really, man, I can't even imagine what this journey must be like as you're trying to really find those next pieces and reconnect that path to another part of a very important part of your family, right? So
yeah. I remember watching the tsunami hit Japan all those years ago. When was that? 2011?
2011.
Yeah, 2011. I remember watching that on TV and thinking, man, what if my family had been affected by the tsunami? Like, and I wouldn't even know, I could belong to a really rich family,
You could also be the Yakuza. I'm just kidding. You could also be the, like, the gangster side. I'm just kidding.
Could be.
Japanese side of society.
That would explain a lot.
Man, I mean, yeah, I do wish you all the best on that journey. It can't be an easy one. But man, I look forward to, perhaps down the road we hear more about that part of, your identity. And in terms of like poetry, what was your first recollection of poetry? Because I know that people say, as islanders, we're just natural when it comes to dancing and singing and that creative element, that performing arts. But I'm always curious about the writing elements. Like what is your first recollection of poetry?
Music, songs.
Of
So
course.
I've always been, I loved books. I always have loved books. And my dad used to take us to the library every Friday evening to get books out. So I always loved those. But yeah, it was lyrics of songs. So as long as I can remember, back in the 80s and early 90s, you have your cassette, player, and you record the songs that you like on the radio and play it back. And I would write down the lyrics of songs. Whenever I bought a CD, I'd open the cover and read the lyrics of the song before I listened to the actual music. So yeah, and I had songwriters that I really loved. So I saw that as poetry. And then I started just writing. Actually, no, I don't know if I saw it as poetry. I just saw it as like I loved words. And then I started writing in high school, I think it was. I actually liked Shakespeare. It made sense in my head. Maybe that's my English side, I don't know. And I actually stole a complete work of William Shakespeare from my English teacher in Form 5. Sorry, miss. I actually still got it. It's on my bookshelf. But then, I started writing. And then one of my friends said to me, that's poetry. And one of my teachers encouraged me. She was like, you've got a bit of a talent there. And then, I just kept writing. And I never really shared my poetry until I was in my early 20s as a youth worker. And I just shared a poem and one night, and it made sense to people and connected. And then next thing you knew, it was a whole opened up a whole new world for me.
You're in a different space, and
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
is, if I was to ask you to describe, just in a few words, Grace, you as a mother, what would you say?
Oh, I'm a super carer, that's for sure. And that's a great thing, but it's also I have a wonderful therapist that I go to, and I'm all for therapy. I think it's amazing, and sometimes it can be a hard, not such a good thing, because I don't let people into like support. I want to do everything to look after everyone. So super carer, and I don't know. I like to think that I'm people-led, people-focused. I understand systems and processes and stuff, but people are always at the center of me when I make decisions, the way I look at life. Yeah, I think it's a hard one, eh?
It is, yeah. Well, what about Grace, the daughter? Like, if you were to describe you as the daughter, what would you, how would you describe yourself?
I mean, that question for me is like pretty deep, because my relationship as a daughter has evolved quite dramatically over the last few years, because my mum was diagnosed with dementia in 2017. And so that happening, I've had to evolve what I think my role as a daughter. And it's something that I'm exploring in my new work that I'm writing at the moment. But I'd like to think that as a daughter, I am alofa in action. Like, yeah.
And poet and writer, Grace, the poet and writer. I know people don't really like to kind of talk about themselves, like, especially when it comes to their craft. They're like, oh, what are some few words that would describe you as the poet and writer, the creative?
To be honest, in the beginning, I was definitely I'm not academically trained in writing or in poetry. I didn't go to university to learn how to write, but I think I'm curious. I think that's the word, actually. Curious. That's what drives I'm a creature of observation. So a lot of my poetry is quite reflective of what I see and experience around me. So yeah, creature of observation and curious. But nosy in that way. I love thinking about why people do the things they do.
I love that. You know, I want to talk about the power of words. Being a performer, creative, and a poet. The power of words. That I know, 2013 is a while back.
A while away.
Afakasi, the
It's
TED
10 years
Talk.
ago.
Yeah, you know, it's about 10 years ago, and this idea, you know, like you've evolved in just so many different aspects of your life, of your craft, and in terms of the word Afakasi, you know, when we think about the power of words, for you, has that word evolved? I know personally, you've already alluded to it. You know, you've grown so much. A lot has happened in your life, but has the term evolved, do you think?
I definitely think the term itself is a journey for the people that it belongs to. So it's different for everyone. I spent 6 years of my writing career exploring Afakasiness and came to a place. The last poem I ever wrote about it was called I Am the Va. And that was based on Albert Wendt's definition of the Va. And that poem really was the final resting place where I felt like I didn't need to explore it anymore. I felt comfortable and at peace. I used to like when people ask you for your bio and stuff like that, I used to define myself as Afakasi. These days, no. I'm a human in my form, and you know, these are my lineage, and however you take me, but I still see power in using the term when it helps to bring inclusion and when it helps to make people feel like they belong. So that's when I would use the term Afakasi. And if someone refers to me as Afakasi, I'm not offended at all, because through my poetry, I felt I redefined and reclaimed it for what it feels and is for me. And yeah, that might be different for other people, but yeah.
Have you met a lot I know you've done and we'll get to it soon. You've worked with many young folks in South Auckland, and I was wondering if you have had other young youth just really share or ask you about being Afakasi, or maybe shared parts of them that resonate with you, like as someone coming up, growing up in South Auckland and really trying to navigate those spaces where you're like questioning identity. Like, have you had any of those stories?
Yeah. Always, ever since I started sharing poetry, and even to this day, you know, there's some videos on YouTube that are up. I'm like, oh, cringe.
You're like, man, why?
But it's not. I'm not ashamed of any of the writing I've ever done. I don't regret any of it. But for me, it's the professional creative in my head going, oh, the production of that's not very good. But I have, to this day, people still, it means something to people. And even people that, like, you know, they're not from the moana, but people like in Europe and stuff that have that, they understand that feeling of being in multiple worlds at one time. And my most recent experience, I was at Denny's in New Lynn with my family.
Shout out to New Lynn, folks.
Yeah,
New Lynn,
just had my first chocolate fudge sundae in years. And I ate the whole thing in like 5 minutes. But I was just leaving, and then this woman, I was with my daughter, and she was like running around, and then there was this other mum with about the same age as me with her little girl running around, and then we both kind of like connected and were like made a joke about our kids. And then she was like, are you Grace Taylor? I'm like, oh yeah. And then she was like, told me how my poems about being Afakasi meant so much to her, and started telling me about her experience. And she experienced my poetry at a time in her life when she really didn't want to be here anymore. And so it's things like that. When that happens, you're like, even though I don't perform or write about Afakasi anymore, or perform any of that poetry anymore, to know that it means something to someone or did at some point in their life is pretty amazing. And that's the power of words, eh?
That's the power of words. And hey, I didn't care what you say. I love those old videos. Like, I'm not even mad. I love, I'm YouTube fan here. I love going on YouTube and looking up that kind of stuff because, they're like timestamps of a person's journey.
I like that.
Like,
Yeah.
and as much like I've had other guests, and I'll be like, oh, I remember that video that you did back in 2020. And they're like, oh no, you didn't. I'm like, oh yes, I did. I love it because it just shows this. It's that we live in this day and age of technology where everything uploaded, it's always like people are searching for that perfection. You've got to, like, when we think about digital storytelling or digital content, it needs to be perfect and happy but I love going back and when I have guests come on and I see some of their their old work online and I'm like, yo, this is what young folks, up and coming creative, they need to see this. The ones today, they need to go back and look at those who paved the way. So especially our Pacifica, our Moana community, go back and check out yeah, man, there's some great stuff on YouTube. I would just leave it there, but yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. I love that old stuff. It's so good. It paves away timestamps of one's journey. That's how I like to think of it.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
I want to talk about, I know, as you've said, when I've looked at all your other work, what I mean is other interviews and I've read articles and things like that. And there's always this big focus on, Afakasi Speaks as your debut work. I wanted to actually ask you about Full Broken Bloom. And that piece of work, and
nice.
it was published in 2018. I think it was when you said you're in a good place now after you wrote the and I'm like, oh, there we go, it's a sign, let's go to the other one. But I wanted to ask about Full Broken Bloom and how that work came about, and if we're really talking about timestamps in your journey, from the initial debut work to all the other performances that were going on at the time, but then that piece of work, like, what are your thoughts on that as you reflect on Full Broken Bloom?
Yeah, Full Broken Bloom was definitely like Afakasi Speaks is here, and it diverted into a whole different direction. And I think so Full Broken Bloom was written after I wrote My Own Darling, and both of them are quite connected in the sense that at that time I was a single mum. And my son's father is amazing and was, still co-parenting and stuff. But I was exploring being a single mum, working a full-time job, and my mum was starting to show signs of the illness. And so there was quite a lot going on in my life at the time. But I was also, for the first time, exploring, I hadn't really been a single girl before. I'd always been in long-term relationships. So it is a bit about my relationship. Well, it's a lot about my relationship to men, but in all the different types of roles, as like dating, my brothers, my father, and just the exploration of what it is mainly about. My exploration is being a single mum and exploring dating and what that's like, and got pretty burned in quite a few ways, and I also exercised my freedom quite a bit as well. So it is a reflection of that journey, and that was a timestamp in my life. And in a way, I think I always wonder what my son will think when he reads that book, because and I hope, and in it, I actually open the book with, do I open the book with this? I can't even remember now. I'm pretty sure. But it's my reiteration of Sina and the Eel. But in it, my publisher, she encouraged me to write it in a storyteller way that I would to my son. And so it's kind of like a, son, this is how you treat a woman. You know, when she says no, it means no. And so, yeah, I look forward to him reading those one day. He's getting to the age where he'll be able to understand it. So, yeah, so it was quite and it was also when I wrote My Darling, my theatre show, that was a game changer in terms of my craft and writing. I think it really helped change me a bit because I had to let go of my ego in that process and not be afraid to, like when you write for theatre, sometimes what you write will never be spoken on stage because it informs the lighting or informs the music or things like that. So it made me a better writer, I feel. And yeah.
You know, do you get it? I'm always like curious about poetry. Like for me, like I really struggle. I have struggled to understand poetry. It wasn't until a few years ago where I listened to Jessica Kilmore, We Want Our Bodies Back. Like she did this like collab with a creative from the UK, somewhere in the UK, and they put out this amazing video of it. And it just caught my attention so much. I was like, yo, I got the book. Then I realized that they put out an audiobook, and it was the very first time where I was like, oh, so this is poetry. Like I've read other, I've read poetry before, I've listened, but it was this, I don't know, something about that book that just, it really like spoke to me.
I think for me, I've always, well, like probably like over the last 5-8 years, I've always had the idea that I'd never want my poetry to just be experienced in one way. I always want it to be accessible in multiple forms, whether that's on the page, on the stage, just audio, through animation. Like, yeah, I never want it to be just one thing because it'll just bore me, to be honest. But also because of our accessibility. But yeah, I definitely I'm I'd say last 2 years, maybe it's COVID, but also because I don't really like being on stage anymore and performing my work. I'll do little readings, like I like doing readings, but I'm getting too old. I'm getting too old to memorize stuff, and no, I just don't want to. I want people to perform my work. Like that's why I do theatre. I write, and I love seeing people bringing the words to life in their own way. That's one of my big things. But also, yeah, working in a digital space, I like the performance of voice more than I like my body and face being seen in a performance. The voice I find really interesting, and yeah, so I definitely my focus is in that space. But I still love a book. I still love
I know people say that, and I love when you, like, I also, many people know this. I know they're like, shut up, Lossa, you talk about this all the time, but I love audiobooks, like, and I love to also hold the book and listen to it, like read it and listen at the same time. I love how you talk about the voice. The voice is that instrument that can really draw in the audience, and I love when you do that with your poetry. Like that helps me to visualize what you're trying to get across to the reader, the listener, the audience. It's just so hard for me, and it's not anything new. Like even coming through school, I really struggled. I love reading, but I just struggled with understanding poetry. So like you said it so well, accessibility. Oh yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Oh, 5 minutes later.
I knew. I just took it from your mind.
You're like, get there, sis. You got this. But so that's, I actually enjoy, and I really like what you put on your social media in terms of posting. I love that content.
Yeah, I've on my Instagram, I've been posting quite a few little in the last few years, putting up, little poems and stuff in the written form and not much audio, but I definitely want to do more of that. But my dream, one of my big dreams of my writing is to actually be able to publish a full collection in Samoan like that. And I'm not fluent in Mainganga, so yeah, to be able to do that one day would be more, not so much the product, like the finished product, but it's the process of getting there. Like, I'm so fascinated by how my poetry would change in the translation process, because it would. So one day.
I wanted to ask, do you, when you're writing, does it take a lot out of you emotionally, especially if it's, a lot of your writing is really tied to your experiences and, certain areas of your life and things like that. Do you find that as a writer it takes a lot out of you and you have to kind of pause, or are you the type of writer who really you just kind of get into it and you get it done, it's out, I'm good, it's there?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely the latter. Yeah, I've never found it to be a taxing emotional thing for me. What is the hard work is finding the time, especially when you're a mum. Like actually finding the time and space. Because I mean, when I'm writing a new work, and usually once I go in, I could go in for 3 days. It's very selfish. Being an artist is a selfish thing. And in terms of the time and energy it requires, like when I wrote My Darling and Full Broken Bloom, like I took pockets of like 3 days where my son went to his father for the whole time and I was immersed in my work. That's a luxury, and I'm still I'm redefining what that looks like now for me. But oh my gosh, where was I going with that? Yeah, it hasn't been maybe there's a few poems where it's been like that when I was younger, but these days I'm not so. I think I've got to a place where I've managed to remove my ego from the process. And I watched what's that cooking, there's that famous cooking show on Netflix where they show different chefs around the world. Chef's Table.
Yes.
Chef's Table. And there was an episode with a Buddhist cook, and she talked about how I've written the quote down somewhere, but like when you remove your ego from the creative process, that's when you experience true creative freedom. And that was so inspiring to me. And I listened to that like 5 years ago or something. And that has been a game changer for me. And I used to when I share my poetry or perform it, how it would be received. That would be the emotional thing. But these days however you take it, you take it. Like I'm not, and accepting, I think as an artist, accepting that not everyone's going to like your stuff and not everyone's going to get it. And that's okay. That's all good. You don't have to. I think if you're trying to please everyone with your creative work, then good luck, cuz.
Yeah, hard, eh? I mean, do you want to, in terms of theatre, just quickly, do you want to do another piece and see that up there? Is that something that you would?
That's what I'm working on at the moment. Yeah, it's called Water Memories.
Water
At the
Memories
moment.
at the moment.
So
Is that the book? You're working on a book or is it a play, or is it?
It's a performance. I mean, you could, for lack of better words, you could say theatre, but it's really a performance, and it'll be in many different forms. It's quite exciting.
I'm excited.
Yeah, that it'll be live performance. But again, I never see any one of my things that I create being one thing. Like it could be a live performance and then it could translate into a book of poetry, who knows. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. But I would love to write for screen too. That's one of my other little goals that I have in my mind one day.
Do you think you'd ever write a memoir, or do you believe that actually your stories have truly being told through your poetry?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, that's when you said that, because I was just thinking, like, I think I've already kind of I do that, like, in real time with my poetry anyway, so, yeah.
Where
Yeah.
does what does your creative space look like? What I mean is, are you? So I know you're a mother first and foremost. Absolutely important. You're a mother. So as a mother who happens to be like this amazing poet and writer, how do you like? What does your space look like? Are you someone who just, when you have time, ideas into your phone, or are you truly a notebook or laptop kind of computer person? I don't know.
I definitely love writing, like, pen and paper on the page. I love that. But, convenience-wise, it is notes on the phone. And the laptop is the luxury when I get, like, a pocket of time. I actually had a little writing session with a friend over Zoom the other night, which was really cool. We were both, like, on a FaceTime call, but, like, muted our things, and we were just 45 minutes of writing, in company with another person, which was really awesome.
That's cool.
So yeah, I think over the years it's become very diversified. Like, honestly, whatever I can grab at the time in the moment, I'll do. Even and also the recorder app. If I'm in the car,
I love that too.
Yeah, record it, and then I'll listen to it later. I'm like, oh no, that was terrible.
Yeah, I'm all about that voice memo. If I like,
yeah.
I remember this one time I couldn't find my journal, and I was just like, at that time, really wanting to write something down, and then I was like on the voice memo app like this. But it was really funny because when I played it back, I was like, oh, what a eats. I was like, what a cringe. Not doing that here, but I hear you. I'm a fan of doing the voice memo app too.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't go to uni to learn how to write. So how for budding writers up and coming, like, what do you say to them? How do you become a better writer? How do you become a writer? Learn how to do all of that, like craft and
you definitely have to be a lover of words. Like, if you're not a lover of words, then it makes it a bit hard, right? So being a lover of words, listen and read. It's not all about you. Know your creative ngafa that you come from. Like, know the people that came before you to pave the way so that you have the opportunities that you have. I think I'm really big on that, like honoring the people that made it possible for you to have what you have now. And find good mentors, like find a good community of writers around you that will push you. Don't get too comfortable. And I'm a huge believer in just working on your craft. Like, I think for me, I'm never fully satisfied. I'm at peace and I enjoy, but I never want to be fully satisfied, or like, I have become the writer that I wanted to be. Because then I think you'll lose that, like, curiosity and that drive. So yeah, those would be my big ones.
And for, as a writer then, or as a poet, who, you spoke about mentors, but who, what are some favorite books or anthologies, or, what's some favorite work that speaks to you or has really kind of helped you on your journey? And when I speak of journey, just so everyone knows, man, great, it's very OG right here. I just want to say that, like, it's not like when I say journey, it's like a few years. I mean, we're talking, you have, so much experience. Yeah. Who are some of those people for you or work?
So many, and many Moana writers, and I'm so blessed to call them friends as well. But I mean, obviously Albert Wendt and Hapele Alpha, more so for the essays, and they helped provide me an understanding of my sense of belonging as a Moana writer. Tusiata Avia is really beloved to me. I love her to bits. Selena Tusitala Marsh was very significant in my early years. I mean, she's a friend and I love her. But yeah, she was huge in terms of how she was exploring Afakasi identity, but also navigating academic space and performance space. Who else? Noel Ravella, she's my sister in Hawaii.
Yes.
I love her, and I've been waiting forever for her writing to be published, and it finally has been. Ask the Brindled is her book.
Yes.
And I love, there's so many writers that I love. Alice Walker, Mama Alice Walker has always been important to me. I was lucky enough to meet her in 2014. She was here for the Writers' Festival, and there was an intimate circle of Wahine writers that were brought together, and I was lucky to be in that circle. And man, she's incredible. I get goosebumps just thinking about her. Sonia Sanchez, Aja Monet is incredible. A lot of them are female writers. There you go. Teresia Tiawa is, of course, an important one. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. And then there's my contemporaries alongside me, like Jara Wasisala. Yeah, I just, there's heaps of writers I love.
That's so cool. That is really cool. You know, we can't like have this we can't be like we're in sharing space without me asking about the work that you have, or just the passion. No, let's take it back. Not the work, the passion that you have for community, the passion that you have for creating spaces for young folks, for the youth of South Auckland, for creatives. Can you touch a bit upon your, this idea of amplifying the voices of our youth in the community that you belong to, the communities that you call home? So, things like Rising Voices Youth Poetry Slam, South Auckland Poets Collective. I mean, there have been so many ways that you've contributed and impacted the lives of just young folks. Yeah, can you speak on your journey, and I guess maybe just some lessons that you've learned from being in those spaces and being around our youth?
Yeah, I think my passion for community and youth work came through my last year of university. And I did a placement at a place called Youthline, and that's when I fell in love with youth work. So I was a youth worker for 10 years or something like that. And through that, I was exploring my creativity and saw poetry and spoken word poetry in particular as a form of engagement with young people that just resonated. So yeah, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I know that in many ways, in some ways, I'm privileged, is being fair-skinned as well. In some spaces, I am privileged and so I always try to, any sort of pathway or door that has been opened for me, or I have worked hard to open it, it doesn't mean anything if you don't leave it open for those coming up behind you, So yeah, I've that's what's always been was always my motivation when it came to youth work and in my community stuff. And I just saw a huge need for our young people to have a place to actually speak for themselves and not have people tell their stories for them, because it just happens so much. So that's why South Auckland Poets Collective came to be, not just because of there's other people that shared this passion, and Rising Voices as well, which was kind of like not only youth community work, but it was providing artistic development for young people as well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I've always had a heart of advocacy, and I always have had a heart for if something doesn't exist and you see that it needs to exist, or the community is calling for it, then go and do it. Like, go and make it happen. I don't really accept a no.
I love
And then,
that.
yeah, and then just like the last few years, like working for our Moana writers and amplifying Moana creativity has been a huge focus for me, and that's why Flying Fetu exists now, because the need is there and the community called it into being, and Lana and I are just answering that call.
You know, I read somewhere that thank you for mentioning and getting onto that, because that's where I was moving to next. I read somewhere that you say we're past the decolonizing target, we're now in the indigenizing stage. So what are your thoughts on decolonizing to indigenizing?
I think with decolonizing, you're still centering the Western way. They're still the center of the narrative. Re-indigenizing is when you're actually placing ourselves into the center. And that's when I think true transformation happens, when we're centering ourselves and we're not defining ourselves from that. I mean, that's why I don't really use the word Pacific or Polynesian or Micronesian or Melanesian, because those words were not ours. They were placed on us by the colonizer. So why would I use a word that centers me? And then that's not to disrespect anyone else that uses those terms, because it's an individual choice. But for me personally, if I want true empowerment and self-governance and self-determination, it comes from centering ourselves. And yeah, and
I like that. I like that. You know, everyone's for those who are listening via the podcast platforms, for those who are watching on YouTube, check out the website www.flyingfetu.com. Flying Fetu's mission is creating spaces to unapologetically be a writer, holding communities of Upu and fostering pathways for Upu to thrive. Check them out, fam. Follow them on Instagram, you know, on social media. Stay connected. It's so inspiring to see Moana artists such as yourself, such as Lana. I mean, there are many, you know, many of you out there just, you know, standing up and telling, you know, taking control. Control is not a good word. Standing up and saying, you know, we're the ones that are going to tell our stories. We're going to share our narratives, not have other people do it for us. So I love, you know, when this started, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Oh my God, this is amazing. It's honestly really cool to see. So, you know, up and coming writers, if you're curious, check them out on social media. Check the bio of this interview. You're gonna see many ways that you can connect with some amazing Moana artists and creatives, such as Grace Iwashita-Taylor. Awesome. Self-care. You're a mom. That's one of your hats. You wear many hats. Being a mom is that number one hat. But you know, how do you look after yourself? You know, please tell me you do look after yourself.
It's a big one for me. I learned the hard way the importance of that. And like I said before, I'm a super carer, you know, so often I would place myself secondary to other people. But yeah, I had a really rough time with, you know, with my mum's diagnosis and stuff. 2016 to 2019 was really hard. Long story, we lost our family home because we had to, all this stuff. If you follow me, you'll know what I'm talking about. But all is that to say, the toxic stress and being in a constant state of survival mode really had a huge impact on me mentally, physically, to the point where I was having panic attacks frequently, severe anxiety. I had PTSD, like quite a lot of stuff going on, that I just hit a breaking point, really. And I engage with Indigenous practices of well-being, and it's taken a while, but I'm in a really good place now. So things that are really important to me, I really believe in. I became curious about my health and my well-being, because I actually was suffering from health anxiety, and that's something where anything going wrong, you think you're on Google and you're searching, okay, I'm dying. Like, I've got a tingle in my left leg. It's this, and this. I'm dying. Like, and it was constant, and it's very debilitating. But through engaging with the right things that work for me, so I've engaged in somatic therapy, craniosacral therapy, miri miri and lomi lomi. I have a psychologist that I see once a week for the last 3 years. Therapy is the bomb. Government should fund it for everyone, straight up. And also like taking care of my nutrition and what I put into my body. I'm not perfect, but I have a nutritionist as well that I see. All these things within our current society is a privilege, because it's not funded by the government, and that these are things that should be a standard for us to all be in a state of well-being. And I became obsessed with breathing techniques, meditation, and the central nervous system. Like, I'm like I'm such a geek about these things. And over the years, I've collected information I know, and I have a Google folder. And randomly over the last few years, I'll meet people that are suffering from anxiety and panic attacks, and I'll share this Google folder with them, and those people know who they are. But yeah, I'm really huge on wellness. I believe I want to live a life that comes from a place of abundance and not a deficit. And I feel like one of the impacts of colonization on our people is that we have been forced into a state of survival mode, living day to day, living from a place of less than. And I think that's what holds us back. And it's hard to break that cycle. But trying to come from a place of abundance, I think, is a huge game changer. But it's hard. Yeah. So that's a lot. I'm very passionate about wellness, well-being.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, you've said several things throughout this talanoa that kind of like, I'm like, yo, that resonates with me. So thank you so much for sharing. I asked you for a book recommendation, and you mentioned a very good friend of yours earlier. Let's give the plug again for Ask the Brindled.
Yes, No'u Ravella. No'u Ravella, Ask the Brindle. She's Kanaka Māori from Hawaii, and she's an incredible writer, an amazing performer. If you're lucky enough to see my sis perform her poetry, then you will know that you are entranced the whole time. Yeah, and she's also a lecturer at the University of Hawaii, Manoa.
So check out the bio. We will have the book you can buy, the book recommendation that Grace is talking about. I've checked out her website and everything. Like, I'm really like, Moses, what is this? Like, it's pretty cool. So fam, check the bio for where you can buy Ask the Brindled. What can we expect from Flying Fetu? Is there anything coming up that we can look forward to?
Yeah. So we last year debuted the first Moana Writers Festival. It's called Flying Fetu Festival. And that's going to be happening every second year.
Oh, nice.
It debuted in Auckland, but we are going to be moving it around Aotearoa. It will be in a different location every year.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a roaming festival.
Yes.
And then this year we have 2 offerings. One is an online digital writers check-in place to hang out, and that's for anyone, and it's free every first Saturday of the month from August to December. And we'll just check it. Follow us on Instagram, and you'll see the link to tap in. And then we also, we haven't announced it yet, but we've got something else exciting coming up. Two opportunities let's just say, we believe in writers being paid to write. And I'll
Oh,
leave it
see,
at that.
fam, she's dropping mad hints right now. You kind of heard it here first. I love it. I honestly, yeah. Please, if you're listening, if you're watching, follow Flying Fetu on their social media. Trust me, you're gonna, and then you can go back on the website, check out what they're doing, what they did last year with bringing all these amazing Moana people, amazing folks together. Check out this exciting stuff
Oh,
coming up.
and Spotify as well. Like our sessions from the
That's
festival
right.
are on
Yes.
Spotify.
Thank you for
Yeah, so you
reminding
can
me.
listen to them.
Those links will be in the bio. I knew that, and it's in my notes, but I forgot to mention. Check out Spotify. Check the link in the bio where you can see all the Flying Fetu sessions. Oh my gosh. If you look at the people that were there, like seriously, I was just like, imagine being a fly in the room. Okay, that's dramatic, but amazing, loving what you're doing. And then for you personally, you've kind of alluded to some things that you're working on. To this, what can we expect from you anytime soon? No pressure.
No, I'm working on a new work called Water Memories. I'm calling it such a poet thing to try and make up a new genre, performance literary art.
Oh,
But
PLA. Okay, just saying. Okay, I love it.
But yeah, it'll probably be presented in 2025. Like I'm writing it this year, and then it'll be workshop next year with people, and it's gonna be a different way with engaging with the theatre work. I'm really essentially what Water Memories is about. It's motivated and inspired by my mother's journey with dementia and our journey as a family, and then it's also about the dynamic of role reversals that happen between a mother and daughter, and also about memory building. How do we retain memories? How do we share them? How do they evolve and change across generations, across places? And incorporated into that is my absolute obsession with the science of water memory, which is a pseudoscience of that water retains the memory of things that it touches and deposits. And so yeah, that's that work, and I'm lucky enough to work with the wonderful unapologetically.
Oh my god.
And the wonderful Mayava Nathaniel Lees. Yes, I'm name dropping a little bit because
Drop them, sis.
Because they're part of my ngafa, and
Yes.
I don't believe any work is created within isolation. It is community, and so I need to name them because they are part of the work as well. But of course, my beautiful mother, Fa'amuamua Elizabeth Iwashita-Taylor, is also obviously the key and the heart of the work. So yeah.
And how is mum doing? I mean, it's still the ongoing journey.
Yeah. It's a very hard illness. It's actually through Water Memories that I have been able to come to a place of peace. And it's still heartbreaking, but I've come to a place to understand my mum's illness from our perspective and not from a Western medical lens. Mum exists in her mind in the ancestral realm a lot of the time now. And I've come to understand, to embrace that and find it as a beautiful thing and not a terrible thing, because Western medicine will tell you that that's a deterioration of their mind. But I see it as the complete opposite now. She's transcending into realms and places that I couldn't even dream of. And at the same time, I'm developing a alofa for my mum that I never would have accessed if it hadn't been for this stranger we call dementia that's come into our family. So yeah, mum, she knows us. She no longer knows us by our names and our like, that's my daughter, that's my son, but she knows us by how she feels about us. And she knows us by love, and I think that's the ultimate. Yeah.
If I was to say the sound of resistance is a woman's voice reflecting on just your journey and just these important timestamps that you've shared throughout the talanoa. What are your thoughts on that in terms of where you've come from, where you are now?
I think when I think of the word resistance, I think of it as pointless unless it comes from a place of alofa. And if the purpose isn't to come to a place of a movement of love, then resistance is pointless. Yeah, I know that's the first thing that came to my mind, because you got me there, girl.
Oh man, I want to pick your brain so much, but we do not have time for that, fam, because Grace is a mum and she has to go. But can I just say, sis, man, I've before I let you go, I just want to say a huge, mad love, huge, big love, big alofa, and huge thanks for just saying yes to coming on. I mean, I know, man, like when I think of you, I'm like, oh, I just hold, you're like right here with all these other like cool, just these cool creatives who have, along this journey of the podcast have said, you know what? Sure, I'll come on the show. And I'm like, yeah, who am I? I honestly always question, who am I? And just, again, you've joined, the Reads with Rosa family. And I'm so humbled and just honored to have shared space with you. It means so much. And I know it's been a very short time, but, just these pockets of knowledge and wisdom and experience that you've shared in this short talanoa has just really there have been things that have resonated with me, and there have been other things that have been very thought-provoking and had me questioning, wait, what? Wait, hold up. So I let me stop rambling, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much just for being you. And, for anyone listening, again, if you're watching or listening, follow Grace and check out her poetry, check out her craft and her artistry, check out Flying Fetu, see what her and Lani Alo, another amazing creative, by the way, and writer, see what they're doing. Because fam, we have to, it's up to us to rise up to that's dramatic, to stand up and to say yeah, cue the violin music. It's up to us to make a stand, to tell our stories, to put out the narratives that we want put out there, not for others to come along and do that for us. So
you're doing it Sunga. Like, honestly, what you've created is incredible. Like, I go onto your Instagram and just seeing how many of these you have done, how many people you've given a platform to, like, incredible. You're doing exactly what you've just said. And I had to also come on here because my soul sister, Sia Lele Pulo.
Shout out Lele, that's what's up.
So now
I was like,
now we've both been on here.
Two amazing, strong women. Much love to Lily. So big love to you and your family, to mum, as you continue that journey. And I'll just hand it over to you, sis, just to wrap up the show with some final knowledge, words of wisdom.
Always eat all the galo. Not just kidding.
Got it.
Just love. Come from a place of love. You can't go wrong if you're coming from a place of genuine alofa, and be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Goes a long, long way. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. You're incredible. This platform's amazing.